Welcome to the Lowe Post Podcast here in Los Angeles. We have about 8 to 10 games left in the regular season for every team. The West race is completely inscrutable. It blows my brain away every single day. We checked in with Jeff Van Gundy before the season, in the middle of the season, and now it's time for our end of season check-in. Where in the heck are we going in this crazy NBA? Coach Jeff Van Gundy, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
I am hanging in. So you were at the scene of the crime last night in Dallas, a scene that I have never witnessed anything like before. One of the strangest things I've ever seen. When the Mavericks thought it was their ball, the Warriors figured out it was their ball and inbounded underneath the Mavericks basket with no Mavericks there and laid the ball in. The Mavericks are going to file a protest saying that there was a communication breakdown at the very least. I believe the video shows Mark Cuban coming up to talk to you guys during the break. What did he say? What did you hear? Like, what the hell happened?
So when the ball went out of bounds, initially the official pointed that it was Warriors ball and they would have it under their own basket. Then he pointed to the Mavericks. They say they were saying that it was just timeout Mavericks. It was a, automatic timeout. The PA announcer, I believe, said it was Mavericks ball.
That was out. That's what I was going to ask you. Did the announcer say? I'm told
I had my headphones on, but I had people tell me that the announcer said it was Mavericks ball.
Our NBA Today production crew has the audio. We're going to play it on the show in a couple hours. They are telling us the announcer indeed says Mavericks ball, which that's a mistake, but it's a loud mistake. Everyone hears it.
Right. So then there's confusion when they come out of the timeout. The Warriors, if you look at Looney, he thinks he's going the other way. He's going to go to the wrong basket at the other end. The Mavericks are a little bit stunned. They think it's their ball, so they're sort of milling around half court. Now, what should have happened is the official with the ball should have never inbounded it. The lead official should have come and taken control and made sure that the Mavericks knew it's Warriors ball. The ball's going this way, so that everybody could get lined up. I think the officials thought it too was going the long way, and that the Mavericks were then going to defend the wrong. Now they won't admit that.
No,
but they totally mismanaged the situation. And there is no chance that Mark Cuban's winning the protest. I think it cost $10,000. He's not going to win the protest, but he has every right, as does his team, to be upset. And they should be upset with themselves a little bit that they didn't react quicker or whatever. But the officiating crew could have and should have managed the situation better.
What did Mark say to you guys? Was he just outlining what their understanding of the situation was? Was there profanity involved? How mad was he?
I would say there was more beeps than other words, but basically, I'm paraphrasing here. Initially, when we came back on, you know how they cut it short now, where they, sometimes you come back in 3 seconds into a play.
Yeah.
Right off TV. I don't know why that works the way it does in TV, but it does. Anyway, they're playing a Steve Kerr timeout like video. So on our screen, and I was looking at the screen so I could hear what Kerr was saying, there was no play show. And so then when I looked up, the Mavericks were taking the ball out and going up the court, which is what I thought was supposed to happen. But then I noticed the score was different. I'm like, how'd the score change? So then that's when you're starting to like, what really happened? And we went back and we saw it, and Cuban came over at the quarter and basically was saying that it was mismanaged. And he told me, and I said it on the air because he told me to say it, like he wanted it out there, that if they lost by 2 points or less, that they were going to protest. And that's why I said it. And, and I think he's going to go through with it. He may change his mind, but, I understand his frustration because, as you highlighted to start, every basket, every quarter, every half, and every game is so important to either making it or being in the play-in or not making it at all, which is a lot of money at stake.
I didn't realize that you broke the news on the air, Jeff Van Gundy. I was on Countdown last night, so we had a million TVs going on. I think we were getting the audio from a different game. I didn't realize you scooped everybody.
Well, I didn't really scoop. I just repeated what he said. But you know what's funny?
That's a scoop. That counts as a scoop.
No, but what's funny, because I don't know these journalistic things. People sent to me after the game, like I guess tweets from different NBA people that said sources confirm that. I'm like, sources? Mark Cuban said it to me, and I said it. Like, of course. I mean, you don't need a source. You got the owner. He's the pocketbook.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I don't think they're going to win the protest because the NBA will say, no, look at they already said it in the pool report. Look at the official. He signals Warriors ball. It's not our fault that he then bang signaled the other way with like a first down signal that maybe was indicating a Mavericks timeout, but also looked like he's pointing that direction. It's not the league's fault that the announcer then interprets that mistakenly and says Mavericks ball for the whole world to hear. It's not the league's fault that the Mavericks line up in some weird way and that Jordan Poole takes the ball from the ref. Very smart. But the best play of Jordan Poole's season, by the way, I think, is taking the ball from the ref and inbounding it immediately. The league will just say, that's not our fault. It's a communication breakdown across the board. But I completely agree with you. And if I were Mark Cuban, I would protest it too, because what I agree with is this. It's the ref's job to notice something is amiss and be like, this is not normal. This is last night was the biggest game of the NBA season to this point. It was the most important game. The Warriors have another game of separation over the Mavericks. They win the tiebreaker. It's a massively important game. It's a 1-point game all the way down until Curry makes that layup to put him up by 3, and then it becomes a little bit of a free throw contest. I would protest it too, because the refs, like you should know this is not correct. Something is amiss. Let's get everyone on the same page, fair play, and go from there. And I think it's not like I think Mark tweeted something like, this is the worst mistake I've ever seen in the history of Earth. Like it's not that bad, but it's bad and it's massively costly, because we're going to get to the West in a second, but I don't need to tell you, Coach, like the Mavs are 36-37. They're 4-8 in their last 12 games. They're 3-6 when Kyrie and Luka play together. It's only 9 games. They lost Jalen Brunson in free agency. Then, because of that, traded their 3rd and 4th best players from last year's conference finals team to get Kyrie Irving, who, by the way, can walk in free agency. And if anyone thinks they know what that guy is going to do in the offseason, I would love to know, because I don't think it's predictable. And they're now 9th in the West. Like, if they lose in the play-in and Kyrie Irving walks, and I'm not saying either of those things are happening or likely to happen, that is a DEFCON 1 situation in Dallas. That immediately becomes a flashbulb, all eyes on the Mavericks. What do they do with their cap space situation? And last night's game makes that situation X% more likely, because, you know, they're going to have to win some games to get out of the play-in now. It's a huge, huge loss.
Well, I think what you said is so correct. The league is going to say it's not our fault. And it isn't the league's fault. The officiating crew, there are a lot of things hard about officiating. That's not one of them last night. That particular play is not one of them. They thought the ball, no matter what they will cop to or not, they thought the ball was going the length of the court. They got confused just like the teams were. And that's where the avoidable mistakes have to be dealt with. And I'm sure they will be dealt with, and there will be a behind the scenes reprimand, because, as you said, a hugely important game, a totally avoidable mistake that was mismanaged by all 3 officials. And again, that's not the hard part. The hard part is officiating all the contact and what's a foul and what's not. And, you know, I mean, all those things are super hard. That one isn't. It was managed. I would just love to see an official come out in those pool reporter things and kill it and say, I screwed up.
Well, the pool report was one question long. Like, so do you get to ask one question and then like a group of henchmen escort you out the door and that's it? Like, I don't get a follow-up?
The thing I've always, I don't know if everyone would agree, but like when you're coaching, right? And you're getting on a guy for a mistake and he says, he takes it harder than you even did. Like, yeah, I screwed up. That's my fault. You don't keep going on the mistake. You say, okay, let's move on. It's the people that try to avoid accountability for the mistake and pin it on somebody else. That really wasn't my fault. That was Johnny's fault. Then you'll keep going. If the official, the lead official last night would have said, hey, Dallas, it was Golden State's ball. We mismanaged the situation. We feel awful about it. We must do better and we will try to do better. This wouldn't even be a story. I even think Mark Cuban would have said, yeah, mistakes, like they happen all the time. Coaches make them, players make them, officials make them. It's just, I think for some reason, officials or how they're taught to like sort of in the moment not take accountability, even though they may think they screwed up. Now, I don't agree with that. I just think they should have just killed it last night and said, we screwed it up. Our fault.
Also, some of these quick ejections lately, the Scotty Barnes one, the Terrence Mann one the other night, like, can we just chill out with these like instant, just throw them all out?
I disagree. I think, again, I wasn't there for each one, right? So Scotty Barnes, if he said, you're cheating us, what do you want the official?
Why is Luka not ejected for the money signal? That's even worse.
I don't know. I don't think they saw that. I saw that. I didn't. I know what it means, but like, I didn't mention it because to me, sometimes trying to get into the intent of a player, again, it's out of control how some of these guys talk to officials. And I got into it a little bit with Dave Patch last night in a joking manner, but we were talking about Doncic.
Oh, by the way, thank God for doing the people's service in that debate, because the guy is complaining after every single call and non-call and just event of life.
The people that complain every call, coaches and players, we start to praise them for like any little of humanity that they show the officials, right? Or like respect. Whereas other guys who may not complain often, the moment they raise their voice, they're banged with a T and maybe an ejection because it's not normal. I think the objective of officiating is to call it as unbiasedly as possible, even though there are many biases out there. Everybody has them, officials, coaches, players, right? But fight yourself on your biases. And when it comes to technical fouls, have a line in the sand about what is and what's not a technical foul. And I don't even mind like Scotty Barnes thing because it's late in a close game. If that official says, I'm not doing it now, but I am going to screw you to start the next game. I tell you that right now. Take it back to you. That's old school refereeing. That's old school. I will get you when I can, but I'm not doing it right now because it punishes the whole team and the game. So I think, and I always say this on the air and probably too much. I don't understand why the officials take what they take. And I don't understand the inequality of what they take being dependent on a certain player. I don't get it. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. And I think that if they would have said a harsher, and I hate when the players then say they won't even communicate with us. Some of these players don't deserve communication because they're not respectful in their communication. What they want is, and coaches too, they want to be able to say in any tone of voice to a referee and then have that referee stand there in a calm manner and talk to them. And I disagree with that. If you want respect, learn to give respect.
I guess I would say the players are competing and the referees are not competing. The referees are competing with themselves and their own standards. The players are trying to win a game, so their temperament is going to be a little different. I don't want to get into it officiating thing. I guess
No, but I want to say one more thing. I agree with that when it comes to physical confrontation, when it comes to player on player. Like, I hate when they hit them with the double T's when it could have easily been like, hey, let's just separate and keep going. But I do think there has been an uptick, a huge uptick in the amount of verbal abuse the referees are subjected to and are expected to take.
I guess the remedy for this protest were the Mavs to win it would be in a very short time period. The season ends in like 2.5 weeks, to replay the last 13 minutes of the game with the score as it was in Dallas with the Mavericks aware that the Warriors about to inbound the ball. I'll tell you, I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be great theater. It would get great ratings if we had to go back to Dallas and replay 13 minutes of the game with like all of this at stake. I think the proverbial toothpaste is out of the tube, and the Mavs are just going to have to take a very, very big L on this one.
ESPN did a great job today. They had 7 winning protests or whatever it is in the last 50 years. And it was fascinating to read about him. The Shaquille O'Neal one was fascinating to me, and he was traded. So they went back and played the X amount of minutes. But I just, it has no chance, but it would be great theater.
All right, let's do, I don't even know how many big questions, some amount of big questions with Jeff Van Gundy for the rest of the season. Are you ready?
Yep.
Question 1. How worried are you about the Denver Nuggets' recent slump, particularly on defense? And the framing of this is, in all this chaos in the West, it ain't going to be this chaotic every season. Some teams are going to have their SHIT together next season and the season beyond. The teams that have their SHIT together now have a great window to win with the conference in total chaos like this, the latest chaos being Paul George's injury, which we'll talk about. So the pressure is on Denver. They feel like a rising feel-good story. They're here now. They've had a kind of weird month. Their defense has slipped. They've righted the ship with wins over some bad Eastern Conference teams, 3 in a row. How worried are you about their defense with Jokic as the centerpiece of it?
Well, I think you have to be concerned. They're going to get good shots. That's number one. They will get good shots against any team in the NBA. Jokic he's just that good. Murray and Porter and Aaron Gordon have been terrific there because he knows if he cuts, he's going to get the ball. So I think they're going to get great shots. Defensively, I think they should be concerned, not because of the last month, but they're just not a gifted defensive team. They don't have a lot of natural gifts from their best players defensively. Scheme only can take you so far. They're incredibly well coached, but that can only take you so far. I liked what they did with Caldwell Pope, Bruce Brown. Like, they've done what they can do, and now, their best players have to be really, really on point defensively. I think the top 3 teams in the Western Conference, if you told me they lost in the first round, I would not be shocked.
Wow. So Denver, Sacramento, Memphis losing to some combination of the
even
teams.
The top 4. Like, if Phoenix plays the Clippers, and let's just say everybody's healthy, I think Phoenix is probably the most talented team in that scenario. But I mean, if you're playing the Clippers with George and Leonard, I mean, you have a puncher's chance against anyone. So it's I think the higher rated seeds in the West are all vulnerable, whereas in the East, I don't see the top 4 seeds losing. I think they're going to win. Cleveland may be a little bit vulnerable depending on the matchup, but the top 3 seeds will breeze in the first round.
Yeah, I think before the Paul George injury on Tuesday night, I think the Clippers, if it were even possible, and it's just so tight that I don't know that you can manipulate things to this degree, I think they would have loved to find a way to fall into the 6th seed and avoid the Suns in the 4-5, because that's a heavyweight clash. But given how crowded it is and all the tiebreakers involved, it's really hard to be that choosy. And now, obviously, you're just like, we just got to hang in where we hang in without Paul George winning enough games. I've talked a lot about Denver lately. I think their offense is just so good that I think it is possible to win a title with like an all-time great offense and a slightly above average defense. I think you can win 4 playoff series that way. The Mavericks are trying to, if they get in, win with kind of a lesser version of that same model, like all-time great offense, and their defense is just, I mean, they are a teensy team. They are not a good defensive team. They're worse than Denver by a lot. I think you can win it that way, but I do think maybe you're a little bit more vulnerable to the vicissitudes of matchups than a team that's like 5th on offense and 5th on defense. I think if you run into a team that can exploit your one glaring weakness or one of your weak spots, and the Suns loom as that kind of team, I think for Denver, I think that makes you a little more vulnerable. But look, it's there for the taking. It is and it isn't. I mean, all these teams are not great, but none of these teams are bad. Well, let's just go to the next question then. The next big question for Jeff Van Gundy, assuming Denver is a yes to this question, how many teams right now, to Jeff Van Gundy's eyes, in the top, I guess we'll say top 12 of the West, so from Denver to New Orleans, how many do you think can realistically win the Western Conference and go to the finals? And you can start at the top and go down.
Denver.
Okay.
Memphis.
Memphis is still a yes, despite the jaw drama and the absence of Steven Adams and Brandon Clark.
I'm taking everybody as if they're going to be full strength.
Well, Brandon Clark's out, right? So Brandon Clark's
I mean, I'm talking full strength as far as who's possible to come back.
Okay.
If Steven Adams isn't able to come back, that would lessen their chances significantly to me. So I'm going to still put Memphis in there.
I will say before you go down the standings, in all the Ja melodrama, which is serious stuff, I don't mean to minimize it, it's serious stuff. I think the Adams Clark injuries have just been totally under discussed as they just tear away at what that team is, the fabric of that team, bruising, ferocious, rim attacking. Like it's a big gaping hole that they've managed to fill with Aldama and Roddy and Tillman, who's just doing yeoman's work every game for them. And most notably, the other thing that's been under discussed with them is Jaren Jackson Jr. has blown up on offense, and it's a trend that's been going on all season. This has been his best offensive season, and in the absence of Morant and in the absence of Clark and Adams, he has ascended to another level. And so I agree with you. I can't count them out if Adams comes back, because Jackson is reminding you, oh yeah, this Morant, Bane, Jackson thing is like a legit big three. So I also, I think they need Adams, because he gives them the offensive rebounding piece that they're really dependent on, and they don't have it without him. But if they get him back, I can't count them out in this conference. Those 3 guys are that good.
Yeah, and they need that offensive rebounding, with all the drive attacking they do. They need the offensive rebounding as bigs come to help on the misses, just, clean it up and get, second shot attempts. So I think they can. Certainly Phoenix could. Golden State could. I want to say the Clippers, but I do. I think they're capable. For whatever reasons, they haven't put together much good basketball this year. And so I'm going to give them the pass. Golden State,
our preseason pick, our mutual preseason pick, the Clippers to make the finals.
Yeah. I do like Golden State with an outside chance if Wiggins and Peyton get back. If not, they don't have enough. And I think that wraps it up.
Okay, so let's go through the teams you said no to. You said no to Sacramento.
Correct.
Why?
Defensively.
Just don't think they have enough.
Don't think they have enough. I think they've had an incredible year. Fox has been great. I love Sabonis's Sacramento's versions of Jokic. Just incredible offensive talent. They surrounded them with more shooting. The Herter trade was, he's got to get back for them, but the Herter trade was under talked about. I think Monty McNair has done a fabulous job, and Mike Brown and his staff have as well. I just remember back all the criticism they took for the Halliburton trade, and no one's coming forth and saying, all right, I misjudged it. I misjudged not only how it was going to unleash Fox, not having to share the ball, but I didn't really realize how great Sabonis was. And I didn't realize, I believe, maybe in one of your columns, how much that trade allowed them to then go out and get Herter as well. So I think he's done an expert job in renovating that roster. I just don't think they have enough defensive components to go through and win it.
So to your point, I just wrote a big thing on the Kings, and I talked to Justin Holiday and Sabonis, who were both traded in that deal. And they told me, we were on the flight. They were in Atlanta when they got traded from the Pacers. And right away, they flew from Atlanta to Sacramento to get their physicals. Like, the Kings needed them immediately. Holiday was like, I've never been traded and played this fast. And they were like, you know what? Let's see what on the flight. They're like, let's see what the internet is saying about this trade. And they log on to Twitter or Instagram or wherever people under 30 are reading what the internet says about a trade. And they both are like, oh my God, everyone hates this trade. And Sabonis and Holiday look at each other and are like, are the fans going to boo us when we get there? Like, they started to get worried that the Kings fans were going to boo them because Halliburton was so beloved. And so let me ask you the devil's advocate about Sacramento. You have Denver as a yes. Denver has the number 2 offense in the NBA and like the 15th, 16th defense. The Kings have the number 1 offense in the NBA, but they're 24th in defense. Denver can win and Sacramento can't. Is it just their defense is a degree worse to you than Denver's, and maybe their experience level too? Is it a combination of all that stuff?
I would say for me, it's a combination of home court all the way through. So is number 1. Jokic, he's going to be the best player on the floor, and to me, and quite possibly every playoff game he plays in this year. I think that's
second round against Phoenix.
Well, we'll see. It could. I mean, it's possible. I can't say, because I count durability a lot more than a lot of people. Being available to me is important, and that's not to discount. Obviously Durant's going to go down as one of the all-time greats. Booker is a Hall of Famer. Chris Paul, he doesn't. He's Hall of Famer. I'm just saying, Jokic can be the best player on the floor. I don't mean by debate. I mean in any one game.
Gotcha.
He can play the best of any player on the floor.
Every game.
Every game. And Durant can too, by the way. And Booker could too. But I'm just saying, when you have that, you have a confidence about you, like, bring us home, big fella. We'll figure out how to get a couple stops in there. You just make every right play like you do, and we'll ride you to the finish line. So I do think they're more experienced as well, home court, Jokic, and a little bit better defense.
You said no for the Los Angeles Lakers, who are now 1 game under 500. We are going to get a LeBron health update today. Our Dave McMenamin has already reported on SportsCenter that the health update will be a ramp up, and that there is hope within LeBron's camp that he could play in some or all of the last 3 games of the regular season before the play-in, playoffs, whatever the Lakers end up playing in, if anything, after the season. They have played quite well since the trade deadline without LeBron. They are now starting Austin Reeves, who is just been playing phenomenal for the last 2 months. You really don't see a pathway with LeBron and AD and what's been going on there? Because I look around at these teams and I'm like, my thing with the Lakers all year and with a lot of these teams have been, you can win a playoff series. Like, they're good enough to beat any of these teams 4 games out of 7, any, top to bottom.
Agreed.
Winning 3 is just a completely different animal. But no team has anywhere in the West has come to, I kind of, that underlying that sort of line of thought was, some of these teams will click into place and come together in a way that makes them so formidable that can't win 3 playoff series thing feels like a real thing. That hasn't really happened. I guess you're a no on the Lakers.
Well, the Lakers with James and Davis this year haven't played particularly well. Austin Reeves has turned into a free throw machine in the last 2 games. He's an excellent player. I like Schroeder more than most. I love his intensity. I love how they added. I thought Rob Pelinka and his staff did a terrific job adding energy and shooting to their lineup. So they're most certainly more talented. I probably should give them like a puncher's chance at it. So you're probably right. You got LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
And a new team that makes sense around them.
Yeah, and a much better team. I think you're right. They deserve a puncher's chance. I still don't see, a high probability that A, they could stay healthy, and B, that they could win. Are you talking about win the whole thing or win in the West?
Win the West. Let's stick with the West, because those beasts in the East are.
So I think the 3 teams in the East are going to be whoever comes out's the prohibitive favorite, no matter who comes out of the West, other than Phoenix. I think Phoenix has if they're healthy, they have the depth of talent to match up with anybody. But so, yeah, I guess the Lakers do have a puncher's chance. I would just say behind those other teams in my mind.
Yeah, Phoenix is my lately I've been polling everyone on the podcast. Based on what we know now, health-wise, who would you pick to come out of the West? Phoenix has been my default pick. My assumption is Durant will come back for a game or 2 or whatever it is at the end of the regular season. I just kind of default to them. You're a no on the Dallas Mavericks. Another defense depth.
Yeah, and they're just tiny. I mean, like, they have 2 phenomenal individual offensive players, and they just don't have enough defense, size, rebounding. I mean, they got pounded on the glass last night by the Warriors, who are a very tiny team as well. So,
and they were playing big last night by Dallas standards. That was like a big Dallas team.
Yeah, they just have a lot. When you lose a player of Brunson's quality, and you don't evaluate your own roster correctly, like you think he's. They could have had him for $14 million for a long term, $14 million per, which would be an absolute steal. But for whatever reason, they didn't either want to do it then, or they didn't think they could do it then. But that leaving in free agency started the whole process of what you've seen. I thought they were brilliant last year getting Dinwiddie. So I thought they had enough then, bigger Dorian Finney-Smith, great versatility. But now you look out there and you're just like, Kleba doesn't look healthy right now to me. He's not moving particularly well, shooting particularly well. If they're going to make noise, it's going to have to be because Irving and Doncic just make them unguardable, which is possible. And then Kleba, to me, has to give them like a defensive presence where he can help with the rim protection. He can switch on some screens, like he switched last night late. And Curry just, blew by him, and Green did a great job of sealing the help off in the lane and just, shot a layup. So, they would need Kleba, even to me, to win a series. Like, they're going to be in games. These 2 are phenomenal offensive players, but they're tiny and they've got no defensive presence.
Yeah, when they made the Irving trade, I understood why they made it.
Sure.
My initial reaction was, I don't buy them as a title contender as is. Perk and I disagreed on that one. He called them a title contender. I said I can't go that far. And also I just said I would be out of the Kyrie business, but that's just me. But the other night against Memphis, when Luka didn't play, they played a lineup of Kyrie, Hardaway Jr., Jaden Hardy, Davis Bertans, and Christian Wood. And you're just like, you just have no chance. You have no chance to defend or rebound. Zero. You're just praying that they miss and that you guys go crazy. And they just play too many lineups where you look around and like, they just have no chance on defense on the glass. And if it weren't for what Jaden Hardy is doing, and I think this is a real thing. I think Jaden Hardy looks like he's going to be a player. Now, I don't know if he's going to be a 20-point scorer, but he's got game. He's got craft. He's got guile. He's got a 6'9" wingspan. He can shoot it. If it weren't for this, I think there would be like a level of national media panic about the Mavericks right now. But this is like a little feel-good story that's keeping them afloat. But yeah, I've got them out. We both have, so a no on Minnesota, who got Towns back last night, and a no on Oklahoma City. I have a feeling, this is just a feeling, that one of those teams is going to get into the playoffs and is going to be like 2-2 in the first round against a powerhouse and maybe win a series. And we're going to be like, oh my God, what just happened? Oklahoma City. I am rooting so hard for the Thunder to get into the playoffs. I think they're legitimately good. They're super fun to watch. Wing Jalen Williams is a stud. And with him and Giddey and Shea, it's just relentless attacks on the rim, creative coaching. You mentioned Dagnall as a coach of the year candidate. I completely agree. Everyone's assuming Mike Brown is going to win. I think he's the favorite. I have a vote, so I'm not going to say much more than that. But I completely agree that Dagnall needs to be on like the short list. I think I'm going to just say it now. One of those teams is going to get in and make noise in the playoffs, and it's going to be super duper fun. But yeah, you can't win. I don't think either one can win the title or win the West.
Right. I think there are no powerhouses in the West. And I think, we're talking about how close the teams are, 6 through 12. I actually think the top three are closer to, 4, 5, 6 type of seeds in a normal year for whatever
by point differential they are. I mean, even the Nuggets are like kind of a ho-hum, like number one seed.
So Minnesota, I think Conley has brought a stability to them. I think he's sort of helped Gobert in what was a challenging transition. I love Anthony Edwards. I think Chris Finch is big time coach who held them together over Towns' 50-game absence. And so I think they've done a good job. They're talented, and I agree. Somebody could be 2-2. And I think you're right. Mike Brown's most likely going to win Coach of the Year, and deservedly. You could never argue with that. But I could see a case being made for Oklahoma City having the Rookie of the Year, the MVP.
Yes. Oh my God, the MVP.
Well, he's not going to win it.
No, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is not winning MVP, but he is. He's on the show. He might make first team All NBA.
I don't vote on this, but if you went to the top 5 MVPs, he'd be hard to keep off.
Well, you got the big 3 in whatever order you want. Giannis, Luka, Embiid, Joker. And then Luka, Tatum are probably penciled in as the 4 and the 5. But I agree with you. Shea's coming. I'm telling you right now, I think they could win a playoff series if they draw the right team. I think the Thunder could win a playoff series. I might be crazy, but I think they're good enough to win a playoff series, and I'm rooting hard for them to get in. Okay, let's go to the next big question because we just mentioned it anyway. With 8 games left, who's your MVP? You don't have a vote, right? You don't have a vote, but if you had a vote, who would you vote for?
Can I tell you, I am totally uninterested in that question.
But it's my podcast, so you have to answer it.
I'm going to answer, but I'm not going to answer I'm totally uninterested because what it's devolved to is comparison has become the thief of joy, in that every time someone says about player A they think should be MVP, they immediately don't just stop at how well they've played. They then compare them and try to tear down the accomplishments of the guys they don't think should win. And so I don't know who should vote for the MVP, because when I look at all-star balloting, fans do an awful job. Players take it as a joke. Coaches give it no thought. And the media doesn't see enough games, because you're not watching. You can't watch every team, every game,
No.
right? So if you're a stat person, an advanced stat person, Jokic is clearly going to win. If you have
I think that's less clear now than it was a month ago. Embiid has passed him in a couple of whatever advanced metrics of your choice are. He's passed him in a couple.
Yeah, but if you look at the totality of it, to me, and then you take the availability, to me, that's all. But again, I'm starting to do what I don't want to do, which is I don't want to make a case for anybody. But the recency thing, if you're into the recency, you're going to look at like Embiid and say, are you kidding me? And Antetokounmpo. And if you don't really give a lot of weight towards availability, then Giannis may have, one of the great cases of all time. So to me, there's it depends on how you look at it. And I don't know. I know it means a lot to the players, and it should. I just don't know who's qualified to actually vote and who will take the requisite time to study it all, to watch it all, and to take it serious, and not come into where they want a certain person to win. Tom Thibodeau, he said after a game, they were talking to him about Barrett, and he goes, if you torture the numbers enough, they'll confess to anything. And I think that's how people, they just take whatever numbers they want to concentrate on and torture them to make a case. I just think I just don't even know who should vote for it, let alone who should actually win it, because I think everybody you're talking about, and like I said, Gilgeous-Alexander, I don't think anyone's done more for their team than he could have. What he's done for their team, it's amazing. So
the Thunder were here this week in LA. I've been in LA all week. They were here. They're still here. They had 3 games here. There are people around the Thunder who are worried he's not going to make any of the All-NBA teams because they're just a 500 team. I'm like, if he doesn't make an All-NBA team, it's like a crime. He might make first team All-NBA. Forget any media.
Who votes for that?
Media. Okay. I'll say this. So just to be clear, you're abdicating the question, and number 1 on your MVP ballot is joy and happiness. That's what you're voting for.
Yeah, I think, again, and I watch a lot, but what happens is when you watch, if you don't watch every game of somebody's season, and you just watch pockets, which is what I do. I don't watch every game of every team. You see a guy on a good night or a bad night, and your opinion is shaped, versus if you watch every game, Doc Rivers knows what type of season Embiid's had. He's seen every play. Michael Malone knows about Jokic, and Joe Mazzulla knows about Tatum, and Bud knows about Giannis, and they could all make compelling cases for their guy. And so, to me, one of the reasons why I stopped voting was I just didn't feel like I could see enough to give it the introspection that an award of that magnitude deserves. And that's why I come back to, I don't know who should vote for the MVP. I think it's the coaches, but quite frankly, when you see what they do with the All-Stars sometimes, I'm like, they really punt it and spend no time. So
well, they fall into the other trap, which is they've seen 82 games of Embiid and maybe 3 of Jokic, right? And so
it's reputation. So much is not done on that season, but you know, lifetime award achievements in the All-Star game.
Well, I will say, I mean, I have a ballot, and every year I think about giving it up. And the reason I think about giving it up is the NBA needs to find another way to decide supermaxes and all this stuff, or find another voting pool, because the media should not be voting on all NBA given what it determines. It's incredibly uncomfortable for the media. It's bad for players. It's bad for teams. We're sitting here within our hands collectively Jaylen Brown's eligibility for a supermax extension, which is not, and Jason Tatum went through this too, is not just about Jaylen Brown's money, which sucks to be even like 0.0005% responsible for as a voter. It's now also about the Celtics' ability to retain Jaylen Brown long term. Like, the media should not be in a place where they're determining it with any scintilla of importance, tilting the scales at all in the Celtics' favor or disfavor of retaining a star player. John Morant's supermax is at stake in all NBA, and he just got suspended for 8 games. Like, we just shouldn't. And again, I haven't found the best solution for how the NBA should decide who gets the 35% max ahead of schedule. It's not an easy question. They tied it to all NBA. What else could you tie it to? Who's going to vote it for? There's no great answers to this. I just know it's a really crappy position for everybody involved to be in. And you look at and there's lobbying, and it's a complete mess. And I sit here and vote all NBA, and I'm like, there's too much riding on this outside of when it was just an honor.
Right.
With like some shoe contract stuff worked in, like shoe contracts have bonuses for all NBA stuff. But when it was just mostly like an honor, that was one thing. Now it's money and it's team building, and it just shouldn't be on the media's shoulders or the coaches, or I don't know who it should be on, but it's a bad system.
Well, and the transparency, I don't know if for all NBA, if you vote and it's revealed. Maybe
it is.
Okay.
It is.
Which sets up, to me, confrontational and adversarial relationships that all it is an opinion. It's an informed opinion that you guys, and I know, like, I'm sure you do the same, but when Mike Green votes, he like talks to people. He really like stresses about it because of all the things that you say. And I just don't like, I know the transparency is meant to be positive, but I think in these cases, it's negative. I think they should go back to you vote and it's not revealed who you vote for. And if a guy doesn't take it serious and you have unilateral power in the NBA, you ask somebody else to vote, because I just think it's too much. It's like people like, and I don't blame them for taking it personal. And if they take it personal, then their families take it personal, their agents take it personal, and it's I don't know. I think I'm just glad I'm not in that business.
Let's do a couple more big questions. Since Joy got your MVP vote, we'll have to move on to the next one. Joy.
Yes.
I hesitate to ask this question, but just given Paul George's injury, I think it's okay to at least start thinking about it. If the Clippers have already missed their best chance to win the title with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and please, Clippers fans, know that I said if, because this is a thought exercise. They can still win it this year if he comes back in time. I agree with you, Coach, that they haven't really put together like a 10 or 15 game stretch that gives you a ton of faith that they have a championship team in there, but the talent is the talent. But just to pretend, for the sake of just interesting conversation, that their best chance was in the past somewhere. Was the trade worth it for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard effectively? All the picks, all the swaps, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. If it peaks at 2021 conference finals with Kawhi injured, was it worth it?
Well, I would think everybody would say no, it wasn't. I mean, I don't even think if you have the advantage of
Hindsight.
hindsight, then no. But I think when they did it, it made complete sense. And it was brilliant, actually, that they were able to achieve what they were able to achieve, getting, you know, which everybody wants is these huge wings that are multifaceted and multi-talented. And so it made absolute sense. And some things make sense and just don't work out for a variety of reasons. And it's infuriating if you're a fan or if you're in management, I'm sure for the Clippers or on the coaching staff, because you see the possibilities and they've always kept trying to rework their roster to give them a better and better chance. But if it does peak at a conference conference final, I would say everybody would say, no, they wanted better, they wanted more. But one thing I wouldn't do if I was them is I'm disappointed with the results, what it is, but I would take a chance on two great wing players in their primes anytime. And so I hope they don't ever regret that they went for it, because I think going for it takes huge basketball courage. They went for it. And, you know, to now, it's probably been disappointing for them and their fans. But like you said, if Paul, I mean, there's a lot of ifs, but if Paul George gets back and if Kawhi Leonard can see his way to play in consecutive games and they get stable point guard play and they have enough shooting, I mean, they can be dangerous.
Well, Kawhi's been a top 5 player in the league for the last 2 months. I mean, he's back essentially to being Kawhi. I think you nailed the answer. I think you nailed it. It really depends how you look at the question. I think if the results are this, it was quote unquote not worth it. And there is some chance that this ends up in a bust-ish scenario. And by that, I just mean this. SGA is better than anybody thought he was going to be. SGA is a stud, a superstar, and he was the cost of that trade. The draft equity going out the door, the Thunder control the Clippers draft picks this season via a swap that could come into play. Next season outright, 2025 swap, 2026 outright. Another pick has already become Jalen Williams, who has a chance to win Rookie of the Year. So there is a chance that this isn't Tatum Brown bad on the draft pick end of it, but it's still like bad. It's still not great. All that said, I just like, I can't sit here and second guess the process. I think this is just a trade. I will never forget someone in the wee hours of that morning. We were talking through the trade. It was the executive on another team said to me something that is stuck in my brain forever. It could go down as one of the worst trades in the history of the league, and it's a trade you absolutely have to make. And I just thought that nailed it. And I also think, Coach, the 2021 playoffs where the Bucks end up winning the title was a weird playoffs with like no crowds or like minimal crowds. I can't remember exactly what the crowd situation was by the end of that because I blacked out that whole period. And so much of the attention on the Clippers run was the end of the Jazz and how the Clippers without Kawhi destroyed the Utah Jazz as we knew them in a humiliating, embarrassing fashion. And then with Kawhi hurt in the last part of that series, and then the Phoenix Conference Finals was kind of a letdown. Like the Suns won 4-2, Clippers were competitive, but once we knew Kawhi was likely out the rest of the way, there was this sort of denouement, however you say that word, where it was just like the expectations were gone. The assumption was the Clippers would lose to the Suns. And I think the Clippers part of that has been kind of erased from history a little bit. They made their first conference finals ever. Paul George rewrote the sort of mid-career narrative of his career as like a playoff choker, which I thought was semi-unfair to begin with, but he rewrote it in that playoffs. And if Kawhi's healthy, are they the favorites to win the title that season? If it's, they've already gotten by Utah. Like, I just think that part of it has kind of been erased. And look, you can keep Shea, you can keep the picks and all that. There's no guarantee that roadmap, which looks so sexy now because of how well Oklahoma City is set up, there's no guarantee that roadmap ever leads you to the conference finals. So I still think you got to do it, but the results so far have been disappointing. And I think we need to end this segment by saying it ain't over. Let's fingers crossed, pray to the basketball gods. PG comes back sooner than expected and they make a proper run at it.
Right. And you can ask the same thing about the other LA team, right? If they didn't win that bubble championship.
Great point.
Would that have been like, I forgot the term you used for the Clippers, a disappointment or what they traded for Anthony Davis and James and all the Westbrook trade then and all these different trades to put that together, right? I think we would be sitting here saying the same thing, that it was still something they should have done. And, you give them credit for going for it, but it just didn't work. And they won that bubble championship, which was, sort of strange competition to begin with. And, so these things, I think that executive who said, it could be, a bad trade, but you have to do it. I think sometimes at some point, you have to, quit, quote, collecting assets and try to win. And they did. And I give them credit for that. Lawrence Frank, to me, Steve Ballmer, like, I don't know what it's going to end up to be. Like you said, hopefully Paul George is healthy and they have a good chance to do whatever they're going to do. But I love the way they've gone about it. They keep trying to churn it and surround those two guys with whatever they think is best. And they got an outstanding coach in Ty Lue. And sometimes, Pat Riley used to say this, sometimes you're just born at the wrong time. Like you meet up against somebody that's just better than you. Like
you're Andy Roddick.
Yeah. Like he used to say when he was the Lakers, it was the Dallas Mavericks of Ro Blackman and Aguirre and all those guys, Derek Harper. But this year, when you look at the West, if healthy, this is what, to me, they've got to hold the rope on. Like, we could win it. We've had a bumpy year. Guys are not, they're in and out. We sign players, we release players, we trade for players. Some guys we thought would play a big role don't even play. Other guys were starters. Now they're coming off the bench. Westbrook comes in late. Like, it's all this. And yet when they start, and I'll presume they're not going to start with home court, they could go on the road and win game one.
They don't care about home court. They just don't care.
I mean, they're good enough. They can go. They could run through it. They could, and that's. I don't think it'll happen. But if I was a Clipper fan, I would just hold on to that hope.
One day I'll go through all the draft moves and stuff, but because you said they've churned their roster and they have really done a nice job churning their roster. There are some what ifs here and there that are interesting, but it's not over yet. Two more quick big questions. Who is your pick to win the Eastern Conference as of today?
I've been Boston all year, and I'm going to go to Milwaukee.
I thought you were Milwaukee with me preseason. You were Boston.
Then I changed it.
I've been Milwaukee all year. So you're going to Milwaukee. You're off Boston and on to Milwaukee. Why?
I just think the depth of talent. Giannis is just, he's just so relentless in how he plays the game, and they surround him with just great roster building. They've got a great combination of offense and defense. And I tell you, I think they're not going to have that second round, whoever of those three teams, right? Like if both, let's just say it's the standings stay the same way in Boston and Philly are matched in the second round. I mean, you know how well you're going to have to play to come out of that and then go to Milwaukee. And Milwaukee may have problems with, I'm not saying that, but I just think that in this case, the home court of avoiding that second round absolute power. Like the top three teams in basketball this year are all in the East, and only having to play one to advance to the finals to me is huge.
Milwaukee was my preseason pick, and I'm just going to quickly name check 4 guys who seem to be ascending at the right time. Chris Middleton, starting to look like himself.
I'm still concerned. I'm concerned.
You're still concerned? Tell me why.
Just movements. Like, I love Chris Middleton. You know, I was so fortunate to be a part of USA Basketball in both the World Cup and the Olympics, and to be around him and Holiday, but Middleton twice. I have just such respect for his game, his attitude, just who he is as a guy. But he still seems, particularly defensively, not as sharp and as sure. And so I'm going to hold out on that one. Go ahead.
I agree with you. He's getting blown by a lot defensively, and he doesn't seem to be moving quite as explosively on offense. He's never the most explosive player, but his elevation doesn't seem the same. But I'm more concerned about his offense and his defense, because I just think they have the ability to, with Holiday, Lopez, and Giannis, they can absorb a subpar Middleton postseason run. On offense, they need him, and I think he'll deliver enough.
But they need him in the 2-man game late with he and Giannis. Like, it's by far, you know, it's been their go-to, you know, put Middleton in a pick and roll with Giannis, and it's impossible with Giannis roll into the rim. You're going to get something good. And so I hope you're right. I hope he's healthy and ascending. I have so much respect for him.
They've been doing a little more of that in the last 5 games, which is one of the reasons I'm encouraged. Brook Lopez has been amazing as an offensive threat and not just a 3-point shooter in the last 6 weeks, which I love. Javon Carter has had a really nice season, and Joe Ingles has given them more than I thought he would, making shots, passing, all that. Related to this, can Philly win the title?
Yes.
I agree. I've been saying it all year. I've been saying it all year. Philly has everything they need to win the title. The road's going to be hard. James Harden's got to show up in big games. I said on NBA Today all year, they should be offended by how we've talked about him on this show as like this weak third sister in the East behind the 2 juggernauts. They are not as proven as those 2 teams. They maybe don't deserve the same level of benefit of the doubt. They don't need Harden to be Houston Harden. That guy is gone. If he can be 20-10 Harden, they have everything they need to win the title.
I agree. You know, Embiid is so dominant, such a foul drawer, just like Giannis is, right? Which is, to me, what Boston is missing, that guy who just lives at the line, which is such a weapon, obviously, but particularly in the playoffs, you know, to be able to set your defense, because these guys are just relentless. And they have done a great job putting Embiid more at the nail and at the elbow. And man, he's just so good. And I think he's a better passer from there than he was in the low post when facing double teams. So yeah, I think they have everything they need. They need to be mentally tough. They need to be able to withstand some up and down play. I think I'm worried about that for our whole league, let alone just one team. But the ability, that's why I love Milwaukee. To me, they have a level of poise in their best players that are able to play through, challenging times or difficult losses. But I love the toughness that Tucker's has brought. Tobias Harris, as a 4th option offensively, has to come through. You know, he has to give him space, and he can. Maxey, you know, his speed is something that you have to, you know, you better have somebody that can move with Maxey. And there's no one really that you can just say, we're going to disregard that plays in their rotation. And we're going to just help and muck up Embiid or Harden's pick and roll. Even like a Tucker, who's known more for he knows who he is right now, which maybe is one of his great strengths, is he knows exactly what he does well and what he doesn't do well. And I think his year in Miami really helped him offensively. He did more than just spot up. He went into dribble handoffs. He did, he sort of kept the offense churning in the right direction. And I think, Harden, very interesting to me. For a great player and a sustained great player, so much more with Harden is talked about what he hasn't achieved than what he has. And I think Harden has let himself down sometimes, in particular in the San Antonio series when they lost at home. They didn't have Leonard, they didn't have Parker. I don't know who else they were missing at that time, maybe Ginobili too. And he played an inexplicably detached game, right? But you can focus so much on that you don't see a guy who's just a master craftsman pick and roll wise, who, when you ask somebody, hey, I want you to pass more, dribble less, get to your stuff quicker, like they have in Philly, that's what he's done. So I think sometimes, it's this choice that we all make. We're either going to focus on the 10% that we'd like to change in a player or concentrate on the 90% that we like. I think certain players, we gravitate towards what we'd like to change, and other players, we just accept the limitations. And I think Harden certainly has his limitations. This is, I thought they had a great chance in Houston with Chris Paul. They missed, all those threes in Game 7. They had a double-digit lead in both Game 6 and Game 7 that year when Paul was out, those last couple games. So you'd have to say that was his best chance of winning. But this is a real opportunity for he and Embiid. And Embiid, to me, has as much pressure to deliver in playoff games and fourth quarters, which he hasn't done great in. He hasn't done great in finishing close playoff games. So it's not just Harden who has something on the line. It's Embiid as well.
But here's the difference. With Embiid, he's going down fighting. With him, he's not ever going to just disappear and shy away from the game. If he has a bad fourth quarter in the playoffs, he's going to miss some shots. He's going to miss some free throws, but he's not going to say, well, I just didn't get the ball. The ball didn't come to me. And the Harden stuff, I just think, look, he's an MVP. He's a top 75 player of all time. There's no denying any of this. I think the spotlight is fair because that San Antonio game you mentioned, it would be one thing if that were a standalone anomaly. He has like 5 games like that in really, really high stakes moments, including just last season in Game 6 against Miami, which frankly was a Miami team that they should have been able to beat or at least push to Game 7. I just think the scrutiny is not this made up thing. He's got 4, 5, 6 games where you're like, what happened to James Harden in like this game where the whole season is at stake? And so
Can I rebut that just a little bit though?
You may.
Yeah. And I'm not being a Harden apologist right now because I have those like what was that like type of moments. But I believe wasn't he hurt last year a little bit?
He was dealing with the still, I believe, the lingering hamstring or calf or whatever it was.
And so the one thing I would say about Harden,
he also had big games last year. He had a massive game to help them beat Toronto in the first round. Like, so was he hurt then? I just never know how to litigate these things.
Amen to that. If you can't say a guy's healthy when he has a great game and unhealthy when he has a bad game, I think we all, do that. So I'm guilty as charged on that. Good job in holding me to account on that.
No, I'm just asking. I wasn't holding. I was just asking.
No. I love to be held to account because I don't even buy some of the stuff I say. So I'm glad you did that. But with Embiid in particular, I think if you study his playoff games, and I gotta say, I was disappointed 2 years ago, like when he could have protected Simmons and he didn't. And that was blown up to be something much bigger than it was. Like that play that Simmons made, and everybody bailed to me on Simmons to cover their own butts. And just from afar, I thought it was BS. And so,
but it's the same thing. Like it was just one play, but it was the culmination of Simmons disappearing fourth quarter after fourth quarter after fourth quarter after fourth quarter, year after year after year.
Yeah. But like we can just say too, everybody enjoys Embiid more too. They just like him and he's likable. But I think just because we like him shouldn't mean that we lessen the scrutiny. I just think sometimes all of our biases come into play in who we hold to account for their play late and who we overlook and give some outs to. And I'm not saying Harden, listen, of course he feels pressure. He's a great player though. And I just think like he and Embiid getting back, they have a great chance. Let's just cut through it. I think you said it before, they have everything they need. There's nothing now. They're going to have to go through two great teams to get to the finals. And so if they come up short, I don't think it's as much a statement on what they weren't able to do. If they lose in the first round, then there's something that went haywire.
Yeah, there's losing and there's losing, and the manner of it matters. If they lose a competitive 6 or 7 game series to Boston, where everyone shows up and fights and Boston just better, what can you do? If they lose in 5 and something bad happens, then, someone doesn't show up, that's a different story. Last big question, and we'll be super quick. The East, 6-10. If the Pacers had lost in Toronto last night, the East playoffs would have been pretty set just in terms of the identity of the 10 teams. The Pacers gave themselves a fighting chance. Brooklyn 6, Miami 7, Atlanta, Toronto, Chicago. Miami may pass Brooklyn. They have a chance to pass Brooklyn and get to 6. Brooklyn has the tiebreaker. Toronto's played pretty well with Pirtle. Chicago, I just can't figure out to save my life. Atlanta is meh. Of all those teams, who has the best chance, Coach, of making noise in the playoffs? And keep in mind, they're all going to be playing one of those 3 teams in the first round.
Well, that's why I think Miami's, I'm going to say Miami because I think they could get to 5th too. I think they could catch New York. They have another game with New York. Mm-hmm. Like New York could easily lose to Orlando tonight. I think Orlando has had a heck of a season. And I think they have, just like Oklahoma City, they have some real talent. And they've done, they got some real talent. So I think Miami could still catch. They could catch New York. And I think whoever, again, people will say like it's being disrespectful to Cleveland, and it's not. Cleveland's had an incredible year, like really a great year. And they've got a tremendous starting lineup. But they have a little bit of inexperience as far as in their main guys, Mitchell notwithstanding. And I think New York or Miami, whoever comes in 5th, could push Cleveland into a very good series.
I don't think that's a hot. I know Cleveland's got the best point differential in the East or whatever. Like I don't think that's a hot take. Those teams are good. And
I'm
Miami,
not trying to make it a hot take. I'm just saying like what I see with my eyes. Like I don't think any of those teams that you mentioned has a chance in hell of beating the top 3. So it doesn't matter. Like I think Atlanta with Trae Young, he could go win a game by himself because he's a wizard as far as passing, but I don't see them defending well enough. I just don't think those first 3, like I'll be surprised if any of the first round series involving those top 3 teams go to 6 games. I just see them as, win the first 2, lose game 3, win game 4 in a tough, hard-fought game, close them out in game 5, and move on.
Yeah, I think the answer has to be Miami just because of what they've done and how good Butler is in the playoffs, how good Adebayo is overall. I think they need Kyle Lowry to start soon, and he's been looking a little better coming off the bench. When they have Vincent and Hero on the floor at the same time, they're just too vulnerable defensively. They're too small. Kyle Lowry's not tall, but he's like a brick wall he can't post up Kyle Lowry. I mean, I'm not even sure Hakeem Olajuwon could post up Kyle Lowry. I'm being facetious, but that's
okay, I was just gonna say
that's how good Kyle Lowry is in the post. Yeah, Hakeem would dream shake and shoot right over him.
I think Hakeem today could score on Kyle Lowry in the Lowe.
Okay, apologies to Hakeem Olajuwon,
yes.
who I think actually is like really underrated in like when people discuss the top 10 or 12 players of all time. You better mention Olajuwon in that discussion. You better mention him. It has to be Miami. All right, Coach, you got to go. It's just a pleasure doing these check-ins with you. We'll probably have to do another one. I'll make you do another one in the finals at some point. I know you're busy. I try and keep them sparse, but this is 3 for the season. They're all delightful. Thank you for being a scoopster on the scene in Dallas last night and for all your work on TV. It's tremendous. Thanks for slumming it here with me.
You got it, man. Thank you for having me. Take care.